Today, television is viewed by babies, children, teenagers, and adults. Of course, television can be a good thing. Preschoolers can help learning the alphabet on public, for example, Sesame Street. Grade elementary kids can learn about wildlife and on nature shows, and parents can learn about current events and the evening news. No doubt about it. TV can be an excellent educator and entertainer, but despite its advantages, too much television can be detrimental to children. Children who spend more than 4 hours per day watching TV are more likely to be overweight. Kids who view violent acts are more likely to show aggressive behavior, but also fear that world is scary and that something bad will happen to them. The University of Michigan found that just being awake and in a room with the TV on for more than 2 hours a day was a risk factor for being overweight at ages 3 and 4. So my major claim today is excessive consumption of television by children will negatively affect their childhood development. My first claim, television negatively affects unhealthy child development. Second, television viewing can provoke more violent and aggressive behavior from children. Third, television negatively affects children's learning abilities. The first claim, the majority of kids are home watching television rather than spending time outside playing any sport. According to the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, in a typical week, 27% of kids ages 9 through 13 play organized sports, but only 6% play on their own. I thought this was a very good example because I have a sister who's 9, and after school she just comes home and she's right straight to the computer. Like, she has nothing to do outside. There's nothing for her, or playing ball or anything. So I thought it was a perfect example. Most children's free time, especially during the formative years, should be spent in activities such as playing, reading, exploring nature, learning about music, or participating in sports, like I just said. Television can contribute to childhood obesity by aggressively marketing junk food. Children view an average of 15 food commercials every day, and 98% of these commercials are for food of low nutritional value. My second claim, television viewing can provoke more violent and aggressive behavior from children. Children will imitate the violent shows that are being displayed, for example, South Park, Family Guy, and Jackass. 65% say that shows like The Simpsons and Married with Children encourage kids to disrespect their parents. Also, killing in the majority of the cartoons is portrayed as humorous. Some of the most violent TV shows are children's cartoons in which violence is portrayed as humorous, and realistic consequences of violence are seldom shown. Children, particularly girls, are much more likely than adults to be portrayed as victims of violence on TV, and this can make them more afraid of the world around them. The third claim, television negatively affects children's learning abilities. The majority of kids that watch more than 4 hours a day have poor school performance. One study found that more time in front of the TV during weekdays meant poorer school performance at school. The babies have relatively difficult time learning to talk by watching or listening to TV programs. According to a research by American and New Zealand researchers, 59% of children younger than 2 years old watch an average of 1.3 hours of TV per day. The more time babies and toddlers were included in adult conversations, the more quickly their language skills will improve rather than spending more time watching TV. In conclusion, television is harmful to American children. Too much will greatly affect their development. The APP recommends that kids under 2 not watch a lot of TV, no more than 2 hours a day. Children should be more active and should be encouraged by the parents to play more sports. for yesterday.
You're supposed to give me one to give to the other person. I collected them at the beginning of class. Did
And
you
then
not
one
give?
for you?
And then one for me.
Okay, I have that.
Did I give the other one out already?
No.
To somebody?
I have it.
Well, that doesn't do them any good.
Sorry.
I need it now. Well, the one advantage that we have is that although you did not have this in your hand while the speaker was giving their presentation, the speech will be online tomorrow morning. So who needs a day 2 or 3 speaker? Didn't I give you one already?
Well, you gave me a peer validation one.
Oh, peer evaluation.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you're just double dipping here. That's okay. You can have that later, too. All right, the visualization in the introduction was fine. There's a lot of mechanical stuff in the opening section. Once you get to the claim, I think that was a little bit clearer, although sometimes the phrasing on some of your points sounds like you were reading material that you were not as familiar with as you ought to be. Detrimental sounded a little awkward when it came out. The secondary points have a tendency to run together, but you did signpost them as you got to the individual points. But they weren't always phrased as claims. Sometimes it just seemed like you were summarizing what the content of the points was, not giving us an inference on those particular points. I liked the way you combined the statistic and the example on the one point, and you used your sister coming home. I thought that that was a good way to personalize and make this a little bit more meaningful to the average listener. There's a lot of expert testimony that I think is being cited, but it's not very clearly there's not a citation given. In other words, you are presenting information, but I don't think you're giving us a source citation for that information. At one point you say one study found, and then just a minute or so later it says, according to American and New Zealand researchers, and that's about as close as we get to source citations on the evidence in the second and the third point. You need something much more expansive than that. On the first point, the evidence about exposure to food ads seems to be pretty conclusionary. You go from that to kids get fat, and apparently it's not that. They just drink high fructose corn syrup. That's what makes them fat. I think that the generalizations are a little broad given some of the evidence that's presented. In your delivery, you have very little eye contact in the speech, and especially in the introduction, you need to have a lot more. You're trying to connect with people, get yourself some credibility. You're not even into your argument. You're just setting up the argument. If you can talk to people at the beginning, they'll be a little bit more forgiving if you don't look at them every time you cite a piece of evidence, because they understand you have to look down and get that information. But you have to show us that you really understand this argument and you're trying to relate it to us at the end of the speech. Okay, thank you.